All right, today we are diving into one of the most famous and honestly most misunderstood books on strategy ever written, Carl von Clausewitz's On War. Now, a lot of people think of it as this super rigid step-by-step manual for how to win. But what if I told you the real message is the complete opposite?
So, let's just jump right into the big question, right? Can something as messy and, well, chaotic as war really be boiled down to a simple formula? Is there some secret recipe for success, a set of rules that guarantees a win in any tough competitive spot? It's a really tempting idea, isn't it? And believe me, it was just as tempting back in Clausewitz's day.
See, Clausewitz wasn't just writing this stuff in a vacuum. He was actually pushing back hard against a really powerful trend at the time, this seduction of simple rules. You have to remember, this was the Enlightenment era. People were trying to find a science for everything. They figured, hey, if we can make physics and geometry predictable, why not war? So these early thinkers, they were obsessed with certainty. They only focused on stuff they could actually count. The number of soldiers, the angles for an attack, the nitty-gritty of supply lines. They basically treated war like it was some giant predictable machine. And in doing that, they completely missed the most important parts, the messy, unpredictable stuff, like human emotion, fear, and courage.
And this is where Clausewitz steps into the ring. He looked at this so-called scientific approach and thought, this isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. So in his book on war, he just systematically takes these ideas apart piece by painful piece. Let's get into how he did it.
All right, let's start with a really big one. The idea that victory is just a numbers game. The thinking that if you just get more troops to the right place at the right time, you automatically win. I mean, it sounds logical, right? More is better. But for Clausewitz, nope. This was a massive oversimplification. And this quote from him just says it all, doesn't it? He's basically saying that a simple numbers game ignores everything that actually matters on a battlefield. Things like morale, guts, brilliant leadership, and just pure random luck. That simple formula just completely falls apart when it hits the real world. Okay, so another popular idea back then was to treat war like it was a geometry problem. Seriously. Theorists came up with these super complex systems built around abstract ideas like a base of operations or using interior lines to move faster than the other guy. They were trying to draw these clean, perfect lines on top of the absolute chaos of a real conflict. So why are all these fixed systems pretty much doomed from the start? Well, Clausewitz said it all comes down to three basic truths of war. First, there's just constant uncertainty. Good information is almost impossible to get. It's what he famously called the fog of war. Second, you've got psychology. Fear, courage, morale, these aren't just little side details. They are at the very heart of the fight. And third, war is an interaction. It's not a puzzle you solve by yourself. It's a duel. The other guy is actively trying to ruin everything you're doing.
And this next quote, this is where things get really interesting, because it shows a little twist. Clausewitz wasn't actually against having rules or theories. Not at all. He just thought people had it completely backward. He said, theories shouldn't tell you what to do. It should explain what works. Basically, the job is to watch a genius commander in action and then work backward to figure out why what they did was so brilliant. The rules come from reality, not the other way around.
Okay, so if the old systems were so flawed, what was Clausewitz's big alternative? Well, before he could build up his own ideas, he had to tear down the old language first. He needed to make sure everyone was on the same page by getting the basic terms right. He started by drawing this really clear, sharp line between two words people use all the time, tactics and strategy. Tactics, that's about the fight itself. It's how you use your forces in one specific engagement. But strategy, that's the bigger picture. It's about how you use the results of all those little fights to actually achieve your main goal. Tactics is winning the battle. Strategy is using that battle to win the whole war.
And that word, engagement, is absolutely central to his thinking. For Clausewitz, the engagement, the actual fighting, is the basic building block of war. It's that moment where all the planning, all the theories, all the prep work, it all gets put to the ultimate test. It's the only place where physical strength and moral courage are truly measured, and it's the critical link between your tactics on the ground and your overall strategy.
All right, so with those definitions locked in, Clausewitz could finally get to his big, kind of radical idea about what theory is really for. And here's a hint. It's not some machine that just spits out all the right answers. It's something totally different. And here it is. This might be the single most important sentence in the entire book. Theory should be study, not doctrine. What does that mean? It means theory is not a set of strict rules you have to follow no matter what. Instead, it's a guide for your own thinking. It's a tool to help you investigate and make sense of the chaos so you can understand it better for yourself.
So what does that study actually look like in practice? Well, it's about breaking war down into its basic elements. It's about understanding the different means you have to work with. It's about looking back at history with a critical eye to see how things really went down. And the whole point, the ultimate goal, isn't to hand you a checklist. It's to guide your own personal journey of learning and getting better.
Here's another way to think about it. Theory is meant to educate the mind of the future commander, not to accompany him to the battlefield. It's like a mental workout. It's the training you do before the big game. It builds up your critical thinking muscles so that when you're finally in the middle of all the chaos, you're ready to make good calls. It doesn't hand you the answers. It trains you to find them on your own.
So, when you put it all together, we get to the ultimate lesson from Clausewitz, and it's right there in the title of this whole discussion. It's about thinking, not just calculating. And let me tell you, this is a lesson that goes way, way beyond the battlefield.
The real goal here is to turn all that knowledge you have into genuine capability. See, true mastery isn't just about memorizing a bunch of facts or rules. It's about internalizing that knowledge so deeply that it becomes second nature, what Clausewitz called an intellectual instinct. It's that point where you stop having to think about the principles because you've learned how to think with them automatically. Because at the end of the day, in any complex, messy, uncertain situation, whether it's war or business or just life, rigid formulas are fragile. They shatter under pressure. But what lasts? What actually wins? It's the flexible, powerful strength of well-developed judgment. That is the timeless, brilliant insight from Clausewitz. And so that leaves us with one last question, a question for you. In our own lives, with our constant search for easy answers and quick fixes, where are you relying on a simple formula when what you really need is to do the hard, necessary work of building real, flexible judgment? It's something to think about.